Good morning. So you join us at a fairly random opportunity for an in-session piece, and we're down at the very wonderful Hintlesham Fisheries in Suffolk. It's a place that I was drawn to after seeing we've got a very noisy goose on here, very dominant, and is just telling everyone it's his territory. So yeah, I checked out the website, and the fish are amazing. Some real nice scaly ones in here. So along with some winter form, possibly, that sort of helped me form the opinion and conclusion that it was a good place to head. So we came down, collection of little lakes in the rolling rural Suffolk countryside, and we came here yesterday to film a video for the new upcoming Grays X-Flight rods, and it went quite well. You know, despite the weather, you know, the ice melted a week ago, but despite that and the work that we had to do, I managed to catch a lovely pair of mid-doubles, mirror and a common. And we thought, well, with cold water opportunities being quite thin on the ground, and having blanked on my last in-session, we thought we might try and come back today and see if we can elicit another fish, or maybe a couple of fish. So it's just getting light. And we got down here early doors, it was too dark to film, about an hour ago. Got the rods out, just got the kettle on for the first coffee. It's freezing cold at the moment. We had a cold night last night, but I've got a couple of rods back on the spots that did me the 2 fish yesterday, and we're going to film the day as it unfolds, hopefully catch another carp, and I'll show you exactly what I've been doing. It's a lovely start to the day. Only had the rods out a little while. This one was a recast, and got a nice quick bite. So, well, just like the fish yesterday, the fish really do hang on in here. I think it's because of the oxygen content. So all the lakes flow into each other, spring fed from the top end. The water quality is absolutely supreme, and the fish are very lively indeed. To be playing another lovely double on a cold February morning is a joy. Lovely dark edges to the fish. The water's very murky because of the inflow and the flooding that we've had off the fields and so on. A few weeks ago apparently it was absolutely gin clear, but it's murked up now, and the fish have retained a real dark edges. This fish looks like it's got a black tail almost. He's certainly putting it to good use, powering underneath there. Excellent. Thank you, Hintlesham.
So I don't usually fish when I'm actually doing a bit of filming, but after seeing Adam have a couple yesterday, a little bit of winter action with the rods in the car, I thought it'd be rude not to get him out this morning. So put him out, a couple of little sticks on 𝘃𝗶𝗀𝗲cie, winter favourite, and within about an hour or so, the left rod rattled off. Shortly followed by the right rod, but that was a little tench. But yeah, more than happy to get something like this on a cold February morning. So absolutely made up. Lovely fish, lovely colours. Yeah, well happy.
So it's just past the middle of February, and although we're on the back end of an extremely cold spell of brutally cold weather, snow for most of the country. A lot of the lakes have been frozen over. Seem like we've come out the other end of that now, and temperatures are steadily on the rise back to more normal levels, and that provokes quite a response from anglers, judging by the questions I get on social media, which I get a lot of, and I always reply to every one of them. A lot of people, as soon as the weather changed, within a couple of days of the lakes melting, were asking, can I put out bait now? Is it time to start putting in the spring bait? And no is the answer. It's very, very cold still. The water's very, very cold. It's the middle of February, and last week everywhere was covered in snow. So be careful going forward in springtime. Certainly the water temperatures won't have considerably risen until mid to end of March, and shouldn't have reached, or probably won't have reached, the magical zenith of double figures until April time. So I would always advise to go carefully with bait at all times of year really, but particularly at that phase where the fish are just getting their bodies warmed up and they're starting to move about. Just fish for a bite. It's always the best advice, just to fish for a bite, unless you fish one of those unusually hungry waters where piling in a bucket might work. But believe me, if you're fishing for big pressured carp, those are not the sort of venues which are the norm. One of the main questions, or a regular question that I get, is about bait choice in terms of fish meal versus a bird food, or more sort of carbohydrate based type boilie. And the answer to that, although for my big fish fishing I generally I start to introduce the krill from April onwards, sometimes March, the key thing to remember is that fish meals work really well in the winter. You might be surprised to hear that, and it goes against probably the common fashions that have dictated the sport for the last decade or more. But fish meals work well. I mean, I've experimented a lot over the last few years and done well with fish from places like Sandhurst, Bayswater, pressured lakes on very, very fishy and oily mixes when the water temperature has been on the edge of freezing. And that might surprise some of you, but the key is quantity. So before I get onto the quantity, oils that I just mentioned, if you're using them in bag mixes, I just have to say things while I'm thinking of them because I'm getting old now and I might forget it. Hemp oil is a really good cold water oil. So if you're using a fishy bag mix or any kind of bag mix and you want to use an oil, hemp oil will come out regardless of the water temperature and rise to the surface. Sunflower oil is also good. So they're two very good cold water oils that you can use. Getting back to the fish meals, when I think back to years and years ago when we were using the dynamite stick tactic, we used a bit of pepperami, size 10 hook, and a stick mix threaded on, and it was just a leveler everywhere, all over Oxford and out Yateley Way, Frimley and places like that. And that was a very pungent, meaty, oily, fishy mix. And it was when I was thinking about that a few years, three or four winters ago, I thought, you know what? We used to use that every winter, and it was so oily, you used to get a slick come up over the spot when you got a bite, just from the stick itself, not from loads of bait. And I thought, well, although fashions and trends have changed and generally winter bait approach is circled around sweet, creamy, nutty, that sort of stuff, then I thought, well, that wasn't the case not so long ago. So I reverted back to, because I like to fish different to the mainstream wherever I can, I reverted back to these fishy, oily mixes. Ostensibly liquidized krill, very finely crumbed up, mixed with 2.3 bloodworm pellets, to which I'll add some Calanus liquid and some hemp oil, mix it all up, and you get a really good pungent, stodgy, no, not stodgy, that's the wrong word. If you've got too much liquid in it, stodgy, then it won't break down, but a nice damp mix that you can squeeze together that after 10 minutes on the bottom will break apart nicely. And that's a bag mix that I've done really well on, and when the weather's been absolutely freezing. So that of course links into fish meals themselves in terms of boilies, and the question that I always get asked, krill or manila or Atlantic heat or cell or whatever it is, you know, a fish meal versus a carbohydrate bird food type bait. Now, fish meals work really well in the winter, as I just detailed, but the thing that really flagged in my mind on this was a few years, well, constantly actually over a succession of winters, is talking to people, specimen hunters, pike anglers and that. They're catching carp in February and January, carp, on tiny little dead baits. Now, that really was when sort of the penny dropped again. I thought, well, you can't get any fishier than a fish, right? So they're going to eat fish meal boilies. So the key is a bait like the krill will work really well in the winter, but the thing that you need to bear in mind is quantity. So a bait like the krill is a very, very rich bait, and it will not go through the fish as readily or as easily as a more carbohydrate bird food type bait. So if you're just fishing with small amounts of bait, the krill will work really well for you. If you're fishing a busy lake where it's potential to get lots of fish and that you could have a lot of feeding activity and you might have to put a lot in, then maybe you'll choose the other option. But just fishing for bites, fish meals work really well. Now, where we are down today, Hintlesham Fisheries, we did yesterday, and then we come back again today. The lake is dominated by fishy type baits, and Phil, the owner, and the owner's son, Phil Jr., told me this from the outset. And although I do like to fly against trends, sometimes, you know, you do come across lakes that have preferences for certain types of bait. Now, although the fish meals that dominate this lake are not krill, I thought, well, if they're liking a fishy type bait, then the krill is definitely going to work. So despite it being February, the fish I've caught, the carp and the tench that I caught just now, have all been on three bait krill stringers. So I'm using Krill Active, which is the paste covered version of the krill in 12mm, and I'm just fishing one of those on the hair and a 3 bait stringer, catapulting a few out in certain spots, put a few baits out when we left last night, but not putting in very much, you know, 20 baits or so, and a couple of the fish have just come to a stringer only on its own. So keeping it lean, keeping it different, you know, I mean, one of those lying on the bottom is completely innocuous. You know, I've not tipped it, I've not glugged it, I've not added anything bright to it. It's just fished on the bottom with 3 loose feeds, and that is a tactic that I've used a lot on a lot of different lakes over the years. Just stringers, bottom baits. It's something that nobody is doing. So we'll look at rigs and how I attach the stringer a little bit in a bit more detail later on. But hopefully that's answered some of you guys your questions on fish meals in cold weather. They do work really well, as we're proving down at Hintlesham today. It's brutally cold still, the water's only about 5 degrees. Fish meals are what they want. So the rig, quite often I see people put a rig up and they'll say, well, the rig couldn't be simpler. It's got a sliding ring there, a little blowback doobrey there, some curved shrink tubes, so couldn't be any more simple than that. Well, this is what I call simple. A knotless knot with a bit of braid and a bait that is exactly the same as the freebies. So I've got a 12mm Krill Active on the hair. The hook link is just soft, supple braid. I've got a small but very sharp hook, quite a long hair, and you'll notice that I've tied the hair so that it comes off by the eye of the hook, sort of old KD style, which just allows the hook to drop down a bit when the bait is lifted. You will notice that I've got the ubiquitous lump of putty just below the hook, 1.5 inches or so below the hook, something I use on all my bottom bait rigs, and I'm sure it plays a big part in causing the carp problems. Soft braided hook link, matching bait, you know, when that's just sat on the deck, there's very little to it. It's very subtle and low key, but it's very effective, particularly in this day of genuinely complicated rigs and pop-ups and Ronnies and metal and hardware and all the agriculture that comes with them. So that's what I've been using on this session. It even nailed me a little tench just now, so That's a sure sign that your rig is working well. Now, coupled with that, I've been using the Krill Actives as a stringer, 3 of those onto PVA tape, and I tie that as a circle stringer, which I'll show you now. So that is the circle stringer, 3 baits tied tightly into a triangle using PVA tape, and that's threaded down the hook link and over the hook bait, over the hook I should say. So you thread it onto your hook link, and the hook just nestles perfectly in between 2 of the baits. The hook bait hangs perfectly tidily below it. You've got something that will not tangle, that protects the hook, and when it melts gives you the perfect presentation of just enough food to get a bite. Stringers are something which is very, very underused. It's something that is very much in my carp fishing weaponry, and that is exactly what I've had the bites on at Hintlesham Fisheries. Well, the day is drawing to a close down at Hintlesham Fisheries. We've had a fabulous 2 days down here, and if you're looking for a day ticket venue that is excellently run, really well kept and full of beautiful fish, it's near Ipswich, and they've got a website, so have a look, and it comes very highly recommended. I'll certainly be coming back. Day 2 not really lived up to expectations. It's yesterday was clearly the better of the 2 days, but you know, finished with a few carp, couple of tench, so it's been all right considering the brutal weather. But today, after that small common early this morning, no more carp. So expected a little bit more, but it's gone very cold. The lake is noticeably different from yesterday in terms of activity from general fish. The roach aren't as active, the pike aren't as active. So whether that's a moon thing or what, I don't know. But as all you anglers out there watching this will know, that fishing just comes in lulls, and you get peaks and troughs, and today for whatever reason is a bit of a trough and the lake is in a bit of a sullen mood. So we're going to leave her to sulk. It's Friday night. We're heading off, Luke and myself, to a weekend ahead of us, a few cold beers and planning the next session. And like all carp anglers, when you finish a session, as soon as you're on your way out the gate, you're planning the next one, and that's what we're going to be doing. So thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed watching. Look forward to seeing you again soon.